joining us today for another episode of What's Your Why Wednesday. I am here today with the incredible Maria Phelps. She is the broker owner at Black Diamond Mortgage Corp. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. And, before I hit record here, we were catching up on one of your incredible physical, challenges that you are doing right now. With you just recently did another incredible event, which we certainly want to learn about also. But to start us off, I do want to get to the most important question that I want to cover first. And that is, most of us came into this incredible industry by accident, but we stay in the industry because it's tied to our personal and professional why. So Maria, we would love to hear, what is your why?
Yeah, thank you again for having me on here. It's such an honor. Gosh, the way you asked that question is perfect because it absolutely ties into how I got into the mortgage industry. So first of all, obviously I'm a mortgage broker and I get to help people buy homes. And the way I got into the mortgage industry was through my own personal home buying experience. And it's interesting because when I went to buy a home, I didn't think I could get a home. And the gentleman that helped me, we were in a situation where the house next to us burned to the ground, and the gentleman actually died in the fire. And so when I called Dave, who is now my business partner, when I called him, I said, I need to buy a house. I don't care what it takes. I need to buy a house because we walked out of our house and literally the smell of burning wires and my kids were, I mean, this was 2015, so my kids, they were still young and just they didn't quite understand. And so to have them experience that, I had to get out of there. I didn't care what it took, had to get out of there. So I had one of those loans that was really hard, self-employed. I had my own marketing company and my credit wasn't the greatest. Like I didn't do everything right. So our loan was really hard, but through that process and how much the team helped me get a loan and helped our family, it was life-changing. And so that was March of that year. By that summer, I had started working at the mortgage company just because it had helped me so much. And I think that the reason why that is so profound to me is that I've always loved to help people and to see them grow. And I think part of that stems from the way I grew up. There's a lot of people in my family and in my upbringing that I've heard stories where they really feel like they didn't do as much as they wish they could. And I didn't want to be that person. And
So
I wanted
almost like a regret, Maria, like
yes,
having regrets.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and some of that too is before my grandma passed away, my mom's mom, she lived right next to us, so I got to spend a little more time with her. And she absolutely had some regret. She had regret with not having the relationships that she should have had with her kids and things that she didn't do. And I just, it's when she passed away was actually when I started my marketing company. And I think that was a trigger because not that I didn't want to be like my grandma, but I really didn't want to be like my grandma. Like,
Well, you also wanted to go beyond that, right?
yes,
So it wasn't that you didn't want to be like her. You kind of saw that and you wanted to
right.
even go deeper and go bigger.
Exactly. And so, my why in all of that is I do like to see people grow. I like to see, them building companies, having kids, and just having a good, successful life. And so when it ties into the mortgage industry like that, the moment that I was able to get my keys, it was life changing for me. And then even now, like that house has helped us pay off our debt, pay off student loans. I mean, it's been life changing. And so now as I look at all these people that I help, it I love it because I was there with them. Even when a client is sitting across the desk from me and they're hesitant because they might have some credit items, but I'm like, hey, I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through. I will tell you, like, I am here to help you. Let's talk about this. What can we do, to make this better for you? And so, I guess my why is really to share that love and just, help people. I really do like to help people and like finding the best ways to do that. And through the mortgage industry, it's been pretty phenomenal. And then also through my health and fitness journey, I get messages on a weekly basis from people that follow my story with my autoimmune disease. And I've talked to 16-year-olds that are struggling with eating disorders.
Mm.
I mean, all on up to 65-year-olds that want to start doing some kind of physical activity. So it's pretty cool to see just how mortgages and fitness actually do go hand in hand. So, but
Yes.
yeah, I want to lift others around me, and I wish my grandma could see me now because I do think
She's watching, Maria.
yeah,
She's watching.
I do think she would be proud because she was kind of a go-getter, but then she had limitations, and I just think I feel like her mind wanted her to do things, but then income, other factors, lifestyle factors, like lots of things kind of went against her. So,
Yeah, and it was a different time. You know what I
oh,
mean? Like it was just
absolutely.
a totally different time for women as a whole. And
Right.
that's the beauty of passing from generation to generation, right? So it's kind of like, okay, I'm passing the baton. Now go take this and go farther, right? Like do more with it. And I love how you expressed how you feel about the mortgage industry because I feel the same way. I mean, and it's funny. I didn't realize it when I was first in the mortgage industry. It kind of hit me later in life where I'm like, wow, we are really affecting people's lives for generations, not just even
Absolutely.
those people. And so you understand that power because it affected you individually. Like as a family, you realized it and you said, well, now I'm going to help others. And sitting across from that table and saying, I understand. I've been there.
Totally.
I speak openly. We're going to get through this together because I can understand and appreciate you.
For
And
sure.
so that is life changing to someone else. It really is. Wow.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right. I get my favorite question now. This is my favorite question because everyone is unique and everyone is so special. So,
Yeah.
Maria, what I'd love to hear, and I'm sure you have lots of these, so just give me one, but give me that one story, that one family, that one team member, that one situation where you kind of said, wow, I've impacted and made a difference in this situation by the work that I do. Please share with us.
Yeah, so our company is actually known for doing hard deals, tough deals, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we get referrals from other banks and mortgage companies. They're like, Black Diamond Mortgage will do it. So, one of my very first loans as a licensed loan officer was a veteran, actually, and a young veteran. And when I'm looking at his certificate of eligibility, I see, when you're looking at I'm sorry, not his certificate of eligibility, but his DD 214,
Mm-hmm.
it lists out, the things that he's done. And I mean, he saw combat, frontline, like just very interesting things. And so to get to be able to work on that loan in itself was special. But what I really loved about them is him and his wife, they had two young kids, super amazing couple. But their situation was uh, low credit. Some of it was tied with the fact that he had been stationed overseas, and there's always a reason, and issues with her pregnancy. Like they just had a list of stuff, like everything you could think of. I mean, we had to write letters of explanation for everything. And it was a really tough deal, and it took a little longer than we wanted to, but every single time I got on the phone with them, they were so grateful, and they said, I don't care what it takes, like whatever we have to do. And we closed the loan, obviously. And what's really great about that is that was at the beginning of 2016, probably. And I've also helped them. So they initially bought their house, and then that was like the starting point. And then they were able to utilize their house to pay off their debt. And so they literally got a fresh start.
Wow.
And this family, even I just talked to them a couple weeks ago because we like to do some follow-ups with clients. And it's fun to hear their stories, how their kids are growing up, and they still live in this beautiful log home in Kalispell,
Oh,
Montana. And that was probably one of the best stories. I could probably tell a ton more, but that family has definitely impacted me. I think ultimately what really struck me is that they trusted me because I was still a new loan officer,
right.
and just to see that progression in their life on how it's the perfect story, because people are sometimes scared to buy a home, but then they don't realize it's literally the biggest asset.
Yeah.
And that can pay off their debt. It can get them into financial freedom. It can really set them up for some really cool things for later in life. And I follow them on Facebook. So just seeing some of the stuff that they're doing, like they're being smart, and now they have this great asset. And so that's probably the biggest thing
Yeah,
that
I think for you, like because that was early in your mortgage career, that number one, like you said, I think you kind of looked at it as an honor to serve, right? So I think
totally.
that's one, right? To be able to serve them. And it kind of symbolizes their progression, symbolizes your progression as you
Absolutely.
are kind of making your way through. And I love that. And you obviously you impact people every single day, but I think it's so important for us in the mortgage industry to take that moment and share that story, because sometimes we don't. Sometimes we kind of just keep chasing, month over month, we're like chasing, and we don't take that moment to stop and say, I I made an impact on
Right.
other people's lives, and you did. And thank you for that. And thank you for everything that you do. It's wonderful. Now, Maria, before we ask that last question, I do want to ask about what you're doing on your different physical challenges that you do and different events and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I want to hear how you got into that and what you get out of that and kind of what insights you want to share with us about that, because that is so special.
Yeah, and that's actually, I feel like it's a big part of my life because I feel that, like, I love the mortgage industry, but I feel that if I wouldn't have got into triathlon, I wouldn't be as successful as I am now. Because actually, if you think about it, mortgages and fitness actually tie in really well. I actually wrote a few things down.
Oh, yes.
Patience.
Tell me.
You've got patience, strength, grace, resilience, grit. And both those literally apply to physical activity and mortgage. And when I got into the mortgage industry, I had left my own marketing company. So I went from dropping out of high school. I'll try to be, or I'm sorry, not dropping out of high school, dropping out of college. I'll try to be quick with. I dropped out of college 1.5 years in. I was on the track team as a heptathlete at one of the big universities in our state. And dropping out, that kind of is a really hard thing to do. And then I actually, that 10 years from the time I graduated high school, I finally graduated college. Took me some time there. But in that time, I struggled with mostly alcohol and uh, some other things, but really trying to not being healthy. I was bulimic. That was part of reason why I actually dropped out as a college athlete. And so, but I graduated. I got my marketing diploma, so that was great. I got my bachelor's, and then in that though, there was things that were going on in my body that I didn't quite, we didn't know what was going on. It was an autoimmune disease, but we didn't know what was happening. And doctors basically, they they kind of equated it to some joint stuff, maybe early onset like rheumatoid arthritis, but they didn't quite have a diagnosis. And autoimmune diseases are really hard to diagnose sometimes. But fast forward just a little bit after having my son and daughter. My son is 16, my daughter is 13. But after having them, but now I'm looking at 2018. So I had been in the mortgage industry now 3 years. I was in some pain. So it's weird to describe, but I was starting to have a lot of nerve pain. And so then I would actually turn to alcohol as a
To numb
solution
the pain.
to try to, so I was getting back into more alcohol and it was reverting back to some old ways. And then I just had this major autoimmune flare. My system shut down. My stomach did. I couldn't digest food. I was in a lot of pain. My hands were shaking. It was very difficult because doctors didn't know what was going on. I went to neurologists. They thought I had MS for a period of time, but then they ruled that out. And then the last thing they told me was, here's some antidepressants.
Oh, no.
Let's try that. So I went away from traditional medicine and I was on a path to see some different doctors that were more natural. But I randomly ran into a rheumatologist that had been helping my dad at the time. And he's like, how's it going, Maria? How's everything? And I said, well, my dad's great, but I feel like crap.
Yeah.
And he literally diagnosed me in the aisle at the local grocery store here. He
Get
said,
out.
yeah, he's like, I think you have Sjogren's syndrome. And the reason why is I literally just got done doing an international study on this disease, and I want to do testing on you. So then that next week I did some testing, and I have the way he diagnosed is through ultrasound imaging of my glands in my face and neck. And what Sjogren's is it actually attacks the mucus and saliva producing glands of your body. So it literally, it can be as minimal as dry eyes and dry mouth, or as big as, if you think about your saliva glands and your mucus producing glands, that's around every organ,
Yeah.
around your nerves, in your gut. So
Wow.
unfortunately, mine affected my gut and my nerves. So it was life changing. So that was in 2018. By 2019, I started getting physically active again. So I started with just 10-minute walking workouts. And in 2019, I did my first race that I had done in a long time. It was called the Glacier Challenge. We got a team together. I did the road bike leg and the 5K leg. There was a canoe, a kayak, a mountain bike, and then an 8-mile leg. So we had
Wow.
a few people doing the rest of them. It was really hard. So,
I bet.
but what that did though is it made me realize how much I liked biking. So then I bought my own road bike. And at the time, I had a friend who was a professional cyclist. And she said, if you want to ride your bike, you might have to get into triathlon because there's not a lot of road races. I was like, crap, I don't know how to swim. Like, this is going to suck. So I had decided at the end of 2019 to go ahead and see what I can do because I have the competitiveness because I had always been an athlete until my early 20s. But then throwing in swimming, I mean,
Yeah.
learning how to swim as an adult is really challenging. But January of 2020, I took a few lessons and then I did my first triathlon the summer of 2020.
Wow.
And then, and actually in 2019, when I found out all this stuff had happened and I had started getting into biking before I decided triathlon, I decided to quit cold turkey alcohol.
Okay.
I was like, I like biking better. Alcohol is not serving me well. And so I've now
Awesome.
been free of alcohol for 3 years. So that's been,
Wow.
yeah. And then, so yeah, my first triathlon was 2020. And then the
During
following,
COVID.
yeah, it was the only race in
Yeah.
And it was really hard, but I did it. And since then, I've done now like 3 Olympic distance triathlons,
Wow.
2 sprint distance. And then I did my first half Ironman in June, which qualified me for the World Championships that just happened this last Friday in St. George, Utah. So, yeah,
Well,
that is kind of
well,
how I
listen,
got into
Maria,
triathlon.
listen, you've been through a wide gamut here, whether it's professional or personal, you've experienced an awful lot, right? So here we are in the mortgage industry in 22. Okay. And it's another cycle, right? Mortgage industry is lots of cycles, some good, some not good, some just status quo. So just like what trials and tribulations and preparing for that race or triathlon or anything, or giving up a substance, right? And making that decision for your body. I mean, all of these things are go through what you had said, patience and resilience and grit and all that stuff. So I'd love to hear from you with having all of that that you deal with on a daily basis. It's not like you did it and you never have to do it again. You're living it right now. What would be your piece of advice to, as people are adapting to once again the new cycle of, yeah, okay, it might be different, but that's okay. It's another race that we're in our life. What would be your piece of advice?
Absolutely. I love your word adapting because I think that's the biggest key because you never know what's going to come thrown at you. I would say the biggest thing would be to keep moving forward because in that simple sentence, like you have to keep walking forward. You have to keep trying to get better every day. And there's going to be days when you have some setbacks, but you would have already taken 10 steps forward before that. So 1 step back is no big deal. So as long as you're continually moving forward, always learning, always trying to help others, and yeah, keep moving forward. I would say that would
Keep
be the big
swimming, right? Right,
keep
Maria,
swimming.
keep swimming.
Yes, keep
You had to
swimming
do that.
for sure. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I had no idea that we were going to cover all of this. So I certainly thank you from the bottom of my heart. Number one, for your vulnerability and your transparency. You've shared a lot, and I know that that is going to help so many in hearing your story to know, don't give up.
Yeah.
That, listen, you were going through all these different doctors saying, no, something is wrong. Something is not correct here. But,
Yeah.
Thankfully, an angel appeared that you
Yeah.
just happened to run into someone that said, wait a minute, I just did a study on that in a paper or
Yeah.
whatever, a speech. So
Yeah.
I love that story because I'm sure there's people out there right now dealing with something like that, whatever that may be. And to keep moving forward and keep asking questions and keep challenging. And
Be an
some
advocate.
days, be an advocate.
Mhm.
Yes. Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, you need to be an advocate for yourself,
That
for
is
sure.
right. That is
And
right.
and sometimes people that like just one last little thing is they're like, I could never do what you do. And I challenge you because honestly, I started with 10-minute walking workouts in my living room. You can find them on YouTube. They're kind of funny, but that's what I started with. And now, yeah, I'm training for half Ironmans, but you don't have to train for a half Ironman. Like you just need to get your body moving because it will help you in your personal and professional life. You have to keep moving your body. You have to do that.
I think I remember you reaching out on the women's group in 2019 saying you wanted to get something going to have people
Yes.
start. I remember that because
Yes, I did.
it was right after Infuse in
Yep.
19, and I remember that. So
Yeah.
I remember watching that, and of course, any anytime people take action, it makes me smile. Whatever the action is, right? I mean, something doesn't have to turn into the biggest thing ever. Like to your point, you just have to make a little progress.
Yeah.
And whenever people say, I'm doing and I'm making forward motion, to use your words, I love that. That makes me happy because just like you said, you love to see people lift higher. You and I are exactly the same with that. Nothing makes me smile more than watching everyone just be their best self, whatever that best self is.
Yep,
Oh, Maria, you are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. You keep doing what you're doing, and we'll be there cheering you on. And we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.